ahead of what a lot of people believe will be this weekend, the first ground invasion of Gaza by Israeli forces trying to root Hamas out of the Strip. We have a lot of coverage on that all over the Just the News site right now. But I wanted to bring in truly one of the most trusted reporters I've ever seen on foreign affairs. Lisa Daftari is as good a journalist as you get. Fair, balanced, insightful, on top of all of the news, and truly a Middle East expert, which is a tricky region to cover. She currently is the editor and founder of one of my favorite websites, The Foreign Desk. If you like foreign news, if you missed the good old days of dispatches from trusted foreign correspondents, well, Lisa has recreated that with The Foreign Desk. Go check that out. But we're lucky enough to have her join us for a few minutes in a very busy news day. Lisa, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, John. Thank you for your wonderful journalism.
Well, back at you. You do literally some of the best foreign coverage I see anywhere. You rival the New York Times and so many other sites for the breadth of coverage every day. If you don't read The Foreign Desk, you don't know what's going on in the world. It's such an amazing product. But you have covered the Middle East for a long time. You have such great insights into the tinderbox that it often is, the dynamics that are at work. This feels like we're heading into a consequential weekend. Maybe the ground invasion is about to start based on what the Israelis are saying. Tell us what to expect, what we should be watching for over the next few hours.
Yeah, it's going to be extremely tactical, defining moment for the Israelis and for Hamas and the international community. I'm just going to set up the scenario right now as to what's going on from my sources within the IDF and Israel's intel community. Thousands of troops are currently staged waiting for the green light to go, and that could be imminent any hour. And according to one source, he said this wouldn't be days or weeks or even 1 month. It may take months. And of course, we know that inside Gaza, there are tunnels, there are booby traps there. This is going to be an incredibly complex and challenging maneuver for the Israeli armed forces, as premier as they are, as trained as they are. And they waited 14 days to conduct this ground invasion. Of course, with President Biden's trip over to Israel, we were concerned that perhaps there would be either a setback or an attempt to de-escalate and to stop the Israelis from moving forward with a ground invasion. But of course, the goal of this war and why this war was called for is because the Israelis have set out to decimate, to the best of their ability, Hamas. And that's what we're looking at right now. In the meantime, Israel's not just fighting that one front against Gaza. We have in the north, Hezbollah. That is actually Iran's number one terror proxy. So in comparison to Hamas in the south, which is in Gaza, Hezbollah in the north in Lebanon is a far more well-endowed terror organization, getting almost $1 billion a year from Iran's regime, as well as training and missiles and a whole cadre of good, sophisticated weapons to use against Israel, and they have joined in the fight. It hasn't heated up to the point where they're actually calling it a second front, but it is something that the Israelis are attentive to. They have already taken out 3 Hezbollah operatives early this morning, and continuing to evacuate civilians from that area as well. Meanwhile, in the West Bank of Ramallah, that's where the Palestinian Authority is located under the leadership of Mahmoud Abbas, who has had some backlash when he did call out Hamas's horrific massacre against Jews. There was backlash. So now he is sitting quietly and not stopping any sort of attacks from the West Bank into Israel as well. So there are three different fronts that are escalating just within Israel right now. And the second part of all this is outside of Israel. We have Iran's proxies not only attempting to target Israel, but of course going after U.S. assets. And we've already seen that coming from Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. All countries that have Iran regime proxies inside of them, insurgencies, weapons, all pointed towards U.S. bases and towards Israel.
And that really is the big gorilla on the block, right? We talk about this being an Israel-Hamas war, but it really is an Iran proxy war. After all the Biden administration did to try to lure Iran to the peace table, Iran has, over the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks particularly, shown it really is not interested in peace. It's interested in destroying Israel and the United States. Is Joe Biden's efforts to get that elusive Iran deal basically shut down now based on the bad behavior that's played out here?
You know what, John? You would think so. That's what logic would dictate.
That's
but
right.
I am not convinced. I am not convinced.
Yeah.
We saw President Obama, where he, at any cost, wanted the Iran nuclear deal to be the crown jewel of his foreign policy, and now we're seeing the same thing with the Biden administration. As you mentioned, for 3 years, he has empowered them, not only bringing them back to the negotiating table when they were asking for ridiculous concessions that even the Biden administration could not agree to. They loosened sanctions, vital sanctions on the regime, where they were able to move forward and sell oil to places like China and make billions of dollars themselves. I know people are really hung up on the $6 billion that the United States gave the green light on in terms of the prisoner swap to be unfrozen, but there's billions of dollars in oil sales that the Biden administration allowed for. So, we have done everything to give Iran the upper hand, to embolden them, to allow them to conduct this war, again, not just against Israel. Israel's doing the dirty work for the rest of the free world, because when they announce a day of rage on all non-believers around the world, I guarantee you it's not about a blockade, it's not about Gaza, it's not about the West Bank. It is just about hating and wanting everyone to fold under that extremist flag of the Iran regime or of Hamas or of ISIS or whatever it may be. This is just a different form of the same extremism and terrorism we have seen for so many decades.
Yeah. No, it is. And it's funny, Iran and its proxies call Israel the little devil, but they consider America the great Satan. We really are the largest target that they have long term, and we can't lose sight of that in the middle of this. Iran is not just Israel's enemy, it is our enemy. I want to turn to the news that just happened a little bit ago. 2 hostages, both Americans, released in what Hamas says is a humanitarian reason to do so. First sort of effort we've seen, is this Hamas blinking because they know something bad's coming over the horizon for them?
Yeah, it does look that way, doesn't it? Just like we saw the hospital bombing and the way that the media and Hamas, of course, loving the partnership they had with the mainstream media, right? Everything is so perfectly timed. Hamas and Palestinians in general, I must say, look, we obviously feel for the victims of all of this, and I have said for decades that the Palestinian people have always been the victims of their leadership,
it's
whether
true.
it was Yasser Arafat
or Hamas, right?
Now Hamas, right?
Yeah.
Exactly right. So, two hostages. Obviously, we're grateful for any hostages being released, but where are the rest of them? We have to demand that those hostages are released. And as you said, I think this is more of a PR kind of tactic right before the ground invasion begins.
Last night, President Biden, national primetime Oval Office address, linked Ukraine and Israel funding together. There's a reason, obviously, because the Democrats would bolt just on Israel, and some Republicans may bolt on Ukraine. Linking them together, they're very different wars, but it seems politically that's the best option that Joe Biden has, given where he stands with the American people. What was your takeaway from the speech last night?
It was a lot of podium talk, and that's what at first I thought it was crazy to link these two and compare these two in the same breath. In many instances, he draw the comparison. I thought that was it was inappropriate, but I do understand the political move, as you said, in linking these two to get it passed right away. And obviously that's something that the president is interested in, particularly when it comes to Ukraine. I actually thought this is more podium talk with regards to the war in Israel. We've seen a lot of that. I know a lot of American Jews and a lot of Israelis, with that, that are very happy with President Biden's support, even though it's just verbal. For me, covering this region for so many years and seeing the money get into the wrong hands, I thought that in one breath he is supporting the Israelis, and in another saying, I'm going to give millions of dollars to your enemy to use against you. Hamas is the official government of Gaza. If we're sending millions of dollars in aid to Gaza, we are sending it to Hamas. And that is the bottom line. They have used every pipe as a weapon. They have used every dollar to put towards terrorism. And if they truly wanted to develop and move forward, they wouldn't be indoctrinating their children. And they would spend that money on turning Gaza into Saint-Tropez of the Middle East. But we haven't seen that kind of action by their government. So sending money to Hamas while in the same breath saying that we have to, support Israel and support Israel's decision to defend itself in whatever capacity they deem appropriate. I think it's really it's hypocritical, but I think a lot of people didn't see it that way. I think a lot of people were happy that he is giving, he talked about Islamophobia, he talked about anti-Semitism, a lot of kumbaya. And I think that, it's a lot of podium talk. President Obama did it wonderfully, and I think Joe Biden, a lot of people, including Republicans, are calling it one of the best speeches of his career, and showing, some sort of leadership. And, John, you cover things every single day, and covering the Biden administration, for me, in terms of foreign policy, there is a direct correlation between the weakness that we have shown in terms of our foreign policy, wherever it may be, whether it's against Russia or China or Iran's regime or North Korea or Venezuela, it's all throughout the world. Our friends are watching, our enemies are watching, and what we're watching unfold in the Middle East, unfortunately, is a consequence of all of that.
Yeah, it is. There's always been this discussion. Strength brings peace, appeasement brings war. And I think the last couple of years have shown that the world is far less stable than it was in 2020. Almost all the bad actors are striking out in some fashion all at once because they feel the U.S. is speaking either with mumbled clarity or no clarity at all. And it's just amazing how just a little bit of appeasement creates a whole lot of instability in this world today. Lisa, people who don't know your site, I literally start my morning every morning reading this. It's one of the top 5 sites I read every morning just to get up and running. People go to foreigndesknews.com. That's where it starts. Just tell us a little bit of what they get when they become a member of the Foreign Desk.
Yeah, you can sign up for free. We do a daily email that comes out at 7:45 Eastern each morning with the day's top 10. You can sign up at foreigndesknews.com and stay ahead of the news cycle before you even get to work. So you can sign up there. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube. You can sign up and subscribe wherever you get your news and however you like to stay informed.
I love that. And you also have an amazing podcast that people can get on the Foreign Desk page. It's really insightful, great interviews, but also just great analysis. I think so much of the coverage today in the mainstream American news media is so slanted, and it's often slanted through omission. And I find most of the omissions are rediscovered when I read the Foreign Desk. It's such a remarkable resource. And anyone who cares about the world, folks, go check out today. Go sign up for Lisa's incredible newsletter and go listen to her podcast because it is must listen to, must watch TV. Final thoughts, Lisa, as we go into the next few weeks. I think the real concern, and when I talk to people around Washington, is does this Israel-Hamas conflict suddenly become a larger three-fronted war and Iran tries to draw the United States into it? Clearly, those little skirmishes from Yemen and the Houthis and Iraq clearly are warning signs that Iran seems to want to antagonize the U.S. From the people you're talking to, what's the best analysis on the potential that this becomes a larger conflict than just clearing out Gaza?
Yeah, I'm sure that the Biden administration was very, very careful, not only about getting involved in a larger conflict. I mean, we have 2 carriers parked out in the East Mediterranean, and it looks like that's more for show than anything else because here the Biden administration not even acknowledge Iran regime's role in all of this. It's very telling how they want this narrative to go. They're supporting Israel. They're closing their eyes to the larger scheme here by the Iran regime to launch a war against the West, and that is obviously against Israel and the United States by proxies. I think that the best case, worst case scenario here is obviously we do want to support Israel. We're watching as they conduct this ground invasion. Israel has lost morale. Israel has lost the PR war, and it has lost its war on social media, and that is very, very important. That is why we're seeing so many damaging protests, day of rage. I mean, I think it's very important for those of you out there who are following this and sharing on social media to share accurate news and reporting and analysis on what is going on, obviously supporting Israel and not letting the other side really use its propaganda machine as it has done for so many years to change this narrative. This is a moral issue more than anything else. You know, we can talk about blockades and Gaza and the West Bank and the fate of the Palestinian people on a later date. But right now, this is just good versus evil. We're watching and we're hoping that this does not escalate. I think the United States will deal with it with these proxy attacks, I think on a more micro scale, as it has done. We have seen many of these attacks in the past, John, as you know.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, I think they're going to try to sweep it away so it does not create a larger conflict. The Biden administration obviously wants to get reelected. Democrats want to get reelected. They're not going to get dragged into something of this scale, which will absolutely escalate into something much, much bigger, perhaps World War III, many people are saying. But I think they're going to leave it in the hands of the Israelis to take care of it.
Yeah, it seems that way. And I think those are the signals. And I think you're right about the battle carriers. They're there more for show. I guess also contingency if there was something horrible. But you're right. I think they're going to keep our footprint extremely limited to keep us from getting into another war. Lisa, it is always an honor to have you on. Your journalism is impeccable. It is such a rich resource. And folks, if you haven't gone and signed up for the Foreign Desk, by golly, go do it today. Don't let another hour pass. All you got to do, go to foreigndesknews.com, Go sign up for the daily newsletter. You get greeted in the morning with really an international newspaper. It's that good. And of course, Lisa's podcast, which we have here at Just the News. You can listen to it here, but just going to her website, you get it every day. It is sensational. Super interviews, impeccable analysis, and news you can trust. So go check it out. Lisa, thanks so much for your tireless work. The last 2 weeks, I've watched with awe all the great content and analysis and news that you've given the American public. You are a treasure to journalism, and it's great to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Don't go anywhere, folks. We got one more good